Hello, and welcome to the Badhumanist look at Enhancement Shaman. In this video, I'm going to be going through all the different passives and abilities that the Enhancement Shaman has baseline, then working our way through the talents, going row by row, looking at choices in each row as well as synergies between different rows. After that, I'll give you a little bit of gameplay here on a dummy, so again, not actual gameplay, but again, just a sense of what the rotation might look like, the different abilities, how procs occur, things like that. After which, I'll talk a little bit about stats, not giving any kind of obviously definitive stat ranking. This is still beta, things are still, of course, up in the air, but just a sense of how different stats affect the gameplay of the Enhancement Shaman. And then I will wrap up with kind of summaries and overall thoughts about the spec. So let's go ahead and begin with our passives here. So Wind Fury, each of your main hand attacks has a 27% chance to trigger 2 extra attacks, dealing a physical damage each. It's baseline 25, it does get improved by your mastery. Stonebringer, your weapon attacks have a 7.2% chance, again I believe it starts about 5%, increased by your mastery here. To reset the remaining cooldown on Storm Strike and to cause the next Storm Strike to deal increased damage, cost no Maelstrom, and trigger no cooldown. So again, very, very powerful there. Reincarnation is your 30-minute kind of build a free battle res. Now the mastery here, so it increases your chance to trigger Stormbringer and Wind Fury by 2.19%, or about 2.2%, and increases all Fire, Frost, and Nature damage you deal by 54.7%. So again, basically all the damage you'll be doing that isn't physical for the most part will be increased by your mastery, as well as the chances slightly of Stormbringer and Wind Fury. Of course, that increases as your mastery increases. Maelstrom weapon, your auto attacks and Wind Fury attacks generate 5 Maelstrom. So again, anytime you auto attack or get a Wind Fury proc, they all will generate Maelstrom. Wind Shear is your interrupt. Water Walking, of course, is the nice utility piece. Tremor Totem is baseline now, so again, it's a 1-minute cooldown. It's just basically in the spec. It's kind of back. And again, it allows you to remove Fear, Charm, and Sleep effects. It's quite useful. This is the talent. Storm Strike, again, is your main kind of Maelstrom spender. 7.5 second cooldown reduced by haste. Again, you attack with both weapons with lightning and deliver a massive amount of physical damage. So again, that is physical damage here. Spirit Walk, again, removes all movement and parrying effects. Rock Biter is your main Maelstrom generator that has a 5-second recharge. Again, maximum of 2 charges. Again, it does nature damage, so this would increase with your mastery. Purge removes a beneficial magic effect from a target. Lightning Bolt, again, is a ranged ability that if you want to use, you can, but again, in general, it's not very strong unless you talent into it. Lava Lash, another big Maelstrom spender, so it charges your offhand weapon, which then will burn the target, dealing fire damage. So that again will be increased by mastery. Hex is Hex, we all know about that. Healing Surge is again your ability to kind of heal yourself. It will consume 20 Maelstrom if it's available and become instant. So you'll have an instant heal if you have Maelstrom available. Ghost Wolf, turn to Ghost Wolf, right? We all know about that. Frostbrand. So this again chills a target that deals a little bit of frost damage, and applying Frostbrand to them, it reduces their movement speed for 3 seconds, and again, each time you hit them, it reapplies that. It lasts for 16 seconds. Flame Tongue, 10-second cooldown reduced by haste. Does a little bit of fire damage, but then enhances your weapons, causing each weapon attack to deal a little bit of fire damage as well. Feral Spirit, your main cooldown here, summons 2 wolves that aid you in battle for 15 seconds. They are immune to movement and parrying effect, and they also grant you 5 Maelstrom each time they attack as well. Farsight, Earth and Spice the talent. Earthbind Totem, again, you put this down and it'll slow people within that range. Earth Elemental is here as well, lasts for a minute. It does taunt and stuff still. Crash Lightning is a very interesting ability here. It really helps you be able to channel AoE while single targeting, which is one of the Enhancement Shaman's real strengths. So he electrocutes all enemies in front of you, dealing some nature damage. Hitting 2 or more targets, however, will enhance your weapons, causing Storm Strike and Lava Lash to also deal nature damage to all targets in front of you. Each target hit by Crash Lightning also increases the damage of your next Storm Strike by 5%. So again, if you're hitting you know, 4 or 5 targets, you can see how that can stack up very nicely. And basically your AoE is also helping your single target. So in fights where you have ads stacked on a boss, or again, like a Mythic Plus where you have a primary target, but you also want to be doing damage so things nearby, Crash Lighting is very valuable here. Again, cost 20 mils from 5-second cooldown. Cleanse Spirit, okay, this removes all curse effects from a friendly target. Capacitor Totem is also now baseline. So again, you place it down after 2 seconds, it will stun all enemies within 8 yards for 3 seconds. Of course, Heroes and Bloodlust is still here. Astral Shift is a personal DR. Astral Recall is another Hearthstone. And Ancestral Spirit is your single target res. So a pretty decent again array of abilities here. Again, you do have some utility now back baseline. Let's take a look at the talents. In the 15 row here, we have Boulder Fist. So again, Rock Biter's recharge time is reduced, and it deals increased damage. So again, the idea here is that you'll be able to hit Rock Biter more often, generating more Maelstrom. Hot Hand. So again, melee attacks with Flamestung active have a chance to make your next Lava Lash cost no Maelstrom and deal 100% increased damage. So as long as you keep your Flame Strike up, you'll get some procs with Hot Hand that then empower your next Lava Lash. It'll cost no Maelstrom and deal increased damage. Lightning Shield. So again, this will surround yourself with a shield of lightning for an hour. So you can see this here. And melee attackers have a chance to suffer damage if they hit you. More importantly, though, for kind of like single target and other type of encounters, whenever you Storm Strike, it will gain 2 charges. And then at 20 total charges, the shield overcharges, causing you to deal nature damage with each attack that generates, so it does nature damage with the attack, and then also generates 100 Maelstrom over 10 seconds. So again, all 3 of these are basically ways of generators. Active Hand and Boulder Fist are a bit more active, where basically you're getting the generation either by not spending Lava Lash, in this case with Hot Hand, so again, you're kind of saving Maelstrom there, or you generate with Lightning Shield, you generate with more Boulder Fist. Now, thirdly, we have Landslide. So Rockbiter has a 20% chance to increase the damage of your next Storm Strike. This clearly synergizes well with Boulder Fist, because again, the more Rockbiters you have, the better. So again, right, you have a better chance of increasing that next Storm Strike damage. Forceful Wind is the passive. So Wind Fury causes each successive Wind Fury attack within 15 seconds to increase the damage of Wind Fury by 100% and the Maelstrom generated by 1, stacking up to 5 times. So as long as you're getting Wind Fury procs within that 15-second window, you can kind of keep stacking this up and up and up, and it'll generate more and do more damage, which is quite nice. Last one here is Totem Mastery. So again, it summons 4 totems that increase your combat capabilities. This will look like the old Shaman when you put down your 4 totems here. So if you want that old style of putting your totems down, I guess this is there for you. So the 4 totems, again, one will generate 1 Maelstrom every second. Second one increases the damage of Storm Strike by 5%. Next one increases Lava Lash damage by 10%. Final one increases your chance to trigger Wind Fury by 2%. So again, it's going to really just come down to tuning on this row, obviously, as far as what ends up being best. Totem Mastery, again, you would have to refresh every 2 minutes. So in a fight, you would have to make sure you don't forget to put these back down. Forceful Wind's a very nice, just kind of passive in the background, does more damage. Landslide's also passive, but again, the idea is that it's requiring you to engage with it more, with the idea of using more Rock Biters, and then, of course, proccing more damage on your Storm Strikes. 45 rows utility row, so you have Static Charge. It just reduces the cooldown of Capacitor Totem by 5 seconds for each enemy it stuns, up to a target of 4 total targets or 20 seconds total. So Earth Shield as well here protects the target with an Earth Shield, increasing your healing on them. So again, if you want to be using those free healing surges on yourself, you can get more healing out of them. This might just be the best for raiding, right? If you're not going to be using Static Charge, and then Spirit Wolf, I'm going to talk about in a second, it's a bit weird. This is also decent raid utility, even if you're not using it yourself, just like throw it on the tank or whatever, and then they'll have that ability. Again, you're not going to be healing them much, but again, at least they'll get the passive healing from that. I would check to make sure it doesn't override or interact oddly with any Resto Shaman's Earth Shield, because obviously that would be better. But again, you can just use it either on yourself or on somebody else. I wish it was damage reduction and not increased healing done. That would be a bit more useful, but it is what it is. Last one here is Spirit Wolf. So when you're in Ghost Wolf form, you gain increased movement speed and damage every second for 4 seconds, over 4 seconds. The problem here is you got to wait for a while. So basically you have to go into Ghost Wolf and then not do anything. So you're just kind of going to be like sitting here. So let me pop back in. You'll just be sitting here. So I mean, it stacks up relatively quickly. Um, again, over 4 seconds. But again, like unless there's a fight where like you need the damage reduction, but at the same time you like can have to run away from the boss or something, right? Like I'm thinking like a like Garathi Worldbreaker or something where you have to run away anyway. That might be useful for that kind of fight because you're running away anyway. It increases your movement speed, you reduce the damage, but again, very niche kind of talent there. 60, we have Searing Assault. So this is Flame Tongue now causes the target to burn fire damage over 6 seconds. This is interesting in the sense that instead of just refreshing Flame Tongue when you normally would, you now actually want to refresh it a bit more often, basically whenever it comes off cooldown, so you can kind of keep that uptime of this. Again, of course, it's going to be down on a priority list a bit. There's a lot of other abilities that are more useful to hit than it, but it will lead to you not always waiting for the full 16 seconds to go over, but instead actually refreshing a bit quicker to kind of keep better uptime on this. Hailstorm is very interesting. So Hailstorm, now Frostband also enhances your weapons, causing each of your weapon attacks to also deal frost damage. So this basically puts Frostbrand into the rotations where you basically would have two things you're keeping up. You would have Flame Tongue as well as Frostbrand that you're keeping up. Both of them going to be 16 seconds. So again, it adds a little bit to your rotation there. Again, you would have been passively doing more damage with every melee attack. The last one here is Overcharge. So Lightning Bolt now consumes up to 40 Maelstrom for up to 1200% increased damage, but also has a 10.1 second cooldown. So if I take this, you'll see Lightning Bolt does a decent amount of damage. 10-second cooldown, and again, at 40 Maelstrom would be that full damage, and at less Maelstrom, of course, it would be percentage-wise less damage. So this is not bad in the sense of it does more damage than a Lava Blast at 40 Maelstrom. I know some people just don't like this playstyle, but it is there as an option. So if you don't like the management that these cause, because again, both Hailstorm and Searing Assault have a kind of dot management where you're watching this 6-second dot and again, kind of refreshing Flame Tongue almost basically off cooldown if possible, or closer to off cooldown instead of waiting the 16 seconds. Which some people might like. Some people would rather say, oh, it's off cooldown, let me hit it again, and not have to have like a weak aura like I have showing you the duration of Flame Tongue and refreshing it every 16 seconds. Hailstorm adds another dot. So if you like dot management, now you have 2 dots. This one, again, just gives you an ability to use in your priority list. So if Lava Lash, basically Lava Lash becomes a lower priority than Lightning Bolt. So basically, instead of Lava Lashing, you would Lightning Bolt. That, of course, would affect things like Hot Hands and other things, right? So, again, you want to be thinking about overall synergies there, of course. 75 row, you have Nature's Guardian. So, when your health is brought below 35% health, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum health. Cannot occur more than once every 45 seconds. Now, the way it's working currently is the heal is literally instant. So the second that you take damage that the game calculates would put you below 35% health, you actually get the heal before the damage is dealt. Now the problem with this is, let's say that, again, I have 26,000 health right now at 110. Let's say that I were to take a hit for 28,000. Okay? So that would kill me. It's a one shot. And this heal actually does nothing because the heal happens first. So it actually overheal. Okay, so I would basically overheal and then take the damage and die. Now, let's say that the different scenarios here. Let's say that I'm at 80% health and I take a hit for 25,000. So in that case, normally I would die at 80% health. I'd be down at something like 22 or something, or maybe 23,000 health. A 25,000 hit would probably kill me. But now I would heal to 100% health and be left with like 1,000 health. So basically, again, that's the way it's working currently. That might be a bug, that might change. So definitely kind of like be checking on the discords and such for what exactly is going on with this talent. But it is an interesting additional survival thing because that heal is instant. So for example, it's not a case where you take the damage and then you heal. So if you're at 40% health and you take a hit for half your health pool, you'll be alive, right? As long as the hit isn't more than 20% more than whatever health you have currently, you will stay alive. So it's basically, unless you're above 80% health, increasing your effective health pool by 20% at all times below that. So interesting talent, definitely good survivability talent. Hopefully they fix it so that it won't overheal. It should always kind of save you in those situations, but we'll see. Fatal Lunge. So again, 30-second cooldown, you lunge at your enemy as a ghostly wolf, biting them to deal physical damage. So again, it allows you kind of leap at the target or leap around and such. So it's more of a movement thing than a damage ability. The last one is Windrush Totem. This is a good raid utility. So you put a totem down, and it will grant all allies who pass within it, or within 10 yards at least, 60% increased movement speed for 5 seconds. So nice kind of raid-wide movement speed thing. It's different than the Roar, but it's similar in its state, especially if there's a case where, like, Iminar, for example, where, again, that pathway was so short, you put it down in the middle, and you can give everybody that runs by it that advantage. All right, 90 row now, we have Crashing Storm. So Crash Lightning also electrifies the ground, leaving electrical field behind, which damage enemies within it for 175 nature damage over 6 seconds. So again, great kind of like Mythic Plus AoE kind of idea where you're going to be using Crash Lightning a lot anyway. And now when you're using Crash Lightning, you're also, there it is, you're also going to be putting down a little, AoE on the ground that's going to be dealing damage to them as well. That damage would, of course, scale with Mastery. Fury of Air, so it costs 3 Maelstrom, plus it'll cost 3 Maelstrom every second. So basically, it creates a vortex of wind 8 yards around you that damages enemies every second and slowing them. So again, very little minimal damage here. It's kind of like a little ticking thing. If it's kind of a passive, it's obviously more there for the slow effect than anything else. The last one here we have is Sundering. So Sundering is nice now because it does actually scale properly now. So it's 20 Maelstrom, 4-second cooldown. So it shatters a line of earth in front of you with your main hand weapon, causing a bunch of Flame Strike damage. So Flame Strike is a mixture of fire and physical damage, and it will always use the one that would calculate the most damage. So for a raid boss, it would do fire damage. If the target was immune to fire damage, it would do physical damage. So you always have that ability there. So because the fire damage part is part of it, it does scale with Mastery. And incapacitating any enemy hit for 2 seconds. Now again, that would of course affect a raid boss, but this is a very powerful ability, and in my opinion, it is for raiding going to be the go-to one. This is definitely better single target than the other ones. However, if you have a fight where you can again use Crash Lightning effectively, Crashing Storm could become the better option here. Even then, it's a question, right? It's definitely going to be a question of if things will stay in that AoE circle that comes down or not. And our final 100 row here is Elemental Spirits. Reduces the cooldown of Feral Spirits by 30 seconds. So that will bring it down from a 2-minute to 1.5 minute cooldown. And causes your Feral Spirits to be imbued with Fire, Frost, or Lightning. So I'm actually going to kind of show this off a little bit here because each one does different buffs. So right now, great, I have 2 Frost. Lovely. So all main attacks now also strike the target with an Icy Edge, causing bonus Frost damage and snaring them by 30% for 3 seconds. So this again is a passive thing where you're going to have a snare on them for the frost. Fire, I believe, actually is going to be increasing Lava Lash damage, if I remember correctly. Or Lava Lash does some kind of snapshotting with damage. Again, I'll use the ability again here in a second when the cooldown is off. But yeah, you have 3 different empowerments. The fire one is the only one that changes your rotation, though. That's to be the noted one. So the frost and the lightning one just kind of passively do extra stuff for you, whereas the fire one, if the fire dog is out, would actually cause you to change your rotation up, which I've always liked those kind of things where RNG that changes your rotation to me is very engaging. Earthen Spike, another great talent here. So summons a Earthen Spike under an enemy, dealing physical damage and increasing physical and nature damage you deal to the target by 20% for 10 seconds. This works out great with Sundering, because you can almost always get an Earthen Spike and then Sunder and basically empower that next Sundering to do 20% more damage. Because again, it is, it would again be counted by that because again, it increases the physical and nature. And this again does partly physical, so you get that physical benefit there. Of course, it also works very well with, of course, Storm Strike, which is, of course, doing physical damage. And then, of course, anything else you have that's doing nature damage. Ascendance is the last option here. 3-minute cooldown, transforms into an Air Ascendant for 15 seconds, reducing the cooldown and cost of Storm Strike by 66% and transforming your auto attacks and Storm Strike into wind attacks that will bypass armor and have a 30-yard range. So with Ascendance, your Rock Biter has a 20-yard range, Flame has a 20-yard range, and now your Storm Strike, would also have a 30-yard as well as your auto attacks. So again, Lava Lash would be the only thing that wouldn't have that. And honestly, if you took the Overcharge talent, you could basically, for 15 seconds, be a ranged DPS class, right? Because you basically have every ability you would need at range. So those are your options here. Ascendance, of course, is the kind of the bursty talent here. I personally like Earth and Spike a lot. Again, it helps buff your main damaging ability, which is Storm Strike. It's up pretty decent amount of time, and more importantly, it's consistent. And I think that's what Enhancement Shaman really needs, is consistency. So the big problem with Enhancement Shaman right now is resource management. Basically, it's very difficult to manage your resource, your Maelstrom, so that you don't end up capping at some point in time. And obviously, capping Maelstrom's not good, because capping Maelstrom wastes any kind of Maelstrom generation you might be getting from your auto attacks, Rock Biters, if you have your Wolves out, whatever the case may be. So you always want to spend, but sometimes you don't have anything to spend Maelstrom. So again, it's one of those things where you want to use Storm Strike because you're getting all these great Storm Strike procs, right? So your next best ability to use is Storm Strike, but it's also going to be free and you're capped. So you actually want to use a Lava Lash to kind of burn it, or again, a Lightning Bolt if you're taking Overcharge, and then Storm Strike again. So you're actually using a less damaging ability just to not cap, so that when you use Storm Strike, you're not capped. It's very confusing. And again, it might end up just being that, yeah, capping is the best option. Forget about worrying about capping too much. If you got a Maelstrom, a Storm Strike proc, just use it, right? Allow yourself to cap. When you're done with your giant chain of procs that oftentimes happens, then Lava Lash to get back down and start regenerating. But the same opposite can happen, where sometimes you don't get lucky with procs, and you don't have any Maelstrom to use abilities on. So it feels bad on both ends, where it's not like you're always at an abundance, in which case you'd be fine, but sometimes you're starved for it, sometimes you have a bunch of it, and that's really, the biggest problem, is that a lot of their talents actually help like generate or help aid in Maelstrom generation, but they don't need more generation, they just need a higher number. So again, I know that they reduced the Maelstrom amount from 150 to 100. To me, that was dumb. I mean, they might have thought, oh, we'll tune the numbers, because technically speaking, the amount of Maelstrom you have is irrelevant. It's all relative to generation and spending patterns, right? So you could change from 150 to 100 as long as you, again, reduce the cost and the generation by the same amount, by the third, right? So as long as you reduce that amount by the third, you should have the same basic approach, right? Because things cost a third less, but they also generate a third less. So if you weren't capping at 150, you wouldn't be capping at 100. That clearly didn't happen. And so it's one of those things where with the current generation and spending patterns and with the procs and all the free stuff you get, basically, you need more buffer zone. So they need either a talent or just make it baseline. Just give them back to the 150 or get rid of it. Just get rid of Maelstrom and have them be a cooldown-based class. That could work too. But again, in the current iteration, I think that's the frustration that a lot of Enhancement Shamans have been describing on the beta, is that it's very difficult to, and it feels bad, right? It feels bad when you're capping and you know you're wasting generation that could be used later. Like I said, you do get starved at times. Like, man, if I could just use my resource better, maybe I wouldn't be starved for energy right now. Or Maelstrom, as I should say. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually show a bit of the rotation here. Get my wolves out there going. Build some up. Get Flame Strike going. So again, the main goal here is just to be using Storm Strike whenever possible. And you do get a good number of procs. If you're capped, of course, you use Lava Lash to kind of help burn some of that extra energy. But other than that, here we go. Got a bunch nice big line there of procs. But yeah, this is the basic kind of play style, right? Where you're building with Rock Biter, you're spending with Storm Strike, and again, you're reacting to those procs. But if you get really lucky, and get a bunch of procs, you can end up in a situation where you really just, again, here we go, right, don't have the resources you need, or you're super capping, right? Like, you want to hit Stormstrike because Stormstrike is the best DPS in that moment you can do, but at the same time you have to use a Lava Lash because you don't have enough, or you have too much of the resource there. So again, it's just one of those things where they need to figure out a way. So here you go, right? A bunch of procs back to back. You're just kind of spamming it. But yeah, that's the basic kind of playstyle here. DPS is definitely variable, but that's to be expected. Again, any kind of RNG spec like this would expect to have some variable DPS depending on their procs and, you know, their chance of their procs and how that's all, of course, happening. So yeah, so the more procs you get, of course, the more DPS you'll be doing. Less procs you get, the less. So that, again, is the basic playstyle here for Enhancement Shaman. Talking about their stats here. So haste obviously going to have a clear effect. There are a lot of abilities that are reduced by haste. Haste also, of course, increases your melee auto attacks, and a lot of their abilities is things that gives your auto attacks more damage. Again, if we kind of look at a breakdown here of my damage, again, Stormstrike and melee are pretty high up there. Both are things that, again, are increased by, the damage is increased by increasing my haste. Okay, here's Stormstrike offhand damage, right? Your Wind Fury attacks. All these things are things that benefit from more attacks. More attacks also give you more procs. You get the point. Mastery, of course, is going to help as well. Mastery also helps increase the percent chance, as well as increasing that background damage. So again, I definitely see Mastery having some pretty good usage, as long as, again, it's scaling properly. Crit is just crit, and so crit inverse will be a thing similar. There's no real crit hooks, if I remember correctly, right? There's nothing that, again, is going to be basing itself off of your crit chance or basing itself off of when you crit. So those kind of things normally help give crit more value above its normal just double damage value that it always has. So again, because of that, crit and versal are basically just damage increasers. They don't really change your rotation in any way or change the kind of priority system in any way. It just is going to, again, increase the damage the more you have. So Haste and Mastery, again, having those kind of hooks will probably have the most value. Again, everything's going to come down to overall scaling, how things at, overall scale as far as, this much percent gives you this much value and how much available resources we have on our gear, which, by the way, at 120 is quite slim. So you'll definitely notice that my percents here at 110 and at like 200, if you will, item level are way higher than what I'm going to be seeing at 120, even at the end of the tier. So by the end of the tier, again, you're not going to have nearly as much percent, right, total. You're probably looking more at like 10% haste, right, maybe 18 or 17% crit, couple percent versatility, and again, probably something along the same lines here with 40 to 50% mastery. So again, you're going to definitely see a decrease from the numbers I have now, even when you get to eye level 370 at 270. They're definitely trying to slow down that secondary explosion that we saw in Legion. All right, so overall thoughts. There's a lot of talk on the internet, on the forums, of Enhancement being a broken spec. And I think it's a bit hyperbolic. I don't think that it's broken. I think it needs some tuning. I think that it needs resource tuning, not number tuning. It can pull great numbers. It just at times doesn't feel good because what you've been trained as a DPS, right? This idea of you never cap your resource. This is true across any spec that has a resource, whether you're playing Hunter or anything. You never want to cap your resource. That's a waste of that generation. You have to, sometimes, it might end up being that, mathematically speaking, allowing yourself to cap is actually better DPS than not. And that just doesn't feel right. And so while it might not be a problem, it might be like, yeah, you cap sometimes, whoop-de-doo. That won't feel good when you're starved. Because you'll think, and you can't help but think, man, if I could just use my resource better, maybe I wouldn't be starved now, right? I generated all this Maelstrom that went to waste, and now I would love to have it back. So I do think that Blizzard needs to do something. They either need to tune the generation and spending amounts of a lot of the talents and a lot of the abilities, or just raise it. Honestly, if it the first case, the case of them rebalancing everything, is not going to happen before launch. That could happen at 8.1, sorry, right when they're doing their next big tuning. But an easy fix would just be to up that amount, right? Make it 125, make it 150, right? Just increase that cap to decrease the chance, or the kind of the buffer, if you will, that would be there for generation. So when you get lucky on those procs, and you're getting a bunch of Windfear procs and a bunch of Stormstrike procs, and maybe you have your Feral Spirits out at the beginning of the fight or something, or in the middle of the fight, you're not capping, right? You're not having to not hit a empowered Stormstrike to hit a weak Lava Lash, right? No one wants to sacrifice a 3,000 to 4,000 DPS or damaging hit to spend one on 1,000 just so you don't cap. Just very counterintuitive. Other than that, though, I think it's actually going to be a great spec for single target tunneling while doing some AoE. So in Mythic Plus, where oftentimes you do have priority targets, but you also have other targets nearby, Crash Lightning and the synergy around the Talons and Crash Lightning are going to be very powerful. And so I do think that they'll be able to channel or tunnel that damage into the single target while still doing good AoE. So that, I think, again, is they don't have good true like just burst AoE. They need that single target to tunnel into, but they have the ability to get some really good AoE cleave while doing good single target. And that's a very unique set of damaging abilities, and one that I do actually think is quite well tuned for Mythic Plus. So that's my thoughts on Enhancement Shaman. If you like what I had to say, go ahead and give me a like. If you disliked what I had to say, go ahead and give me a dislike. If you disagree and want to tell me how I'm wrong, let me know down there in the comment section. If you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and subscribe. I'm almost entirely done with my first look at every single class. All I have left is Priest, which is my main class. It's the class that I main. I'll be doing them next. But every other class is up there, starting with all the way Hunter way back, all the way up. I plan to go back and do some update videos with some of the older classes that I've done to kind of like bring them back up to the modern builds here on the beta, as far as talking about what's going on. But if you want to see some more stuff like that, or get more content going into BfA, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my future videos.